What's up, Daily Fab Gamers? I recently made a joke that Ian Holland should be banned so that I would receive his casting gigs, and while I was mostly kidding, I'm serious when I say that shoutcasting fab events is something I'd love to do. However, public speaking is hard, and casting isn't something I have experience with. I can do analysis well enough, but entertaining and informing an audience while deftly navigating my words is a different beast entirely, and so, why not add some variety to the channel while also practicing the craft? I'll be casting recently uploaded events from the comfort of my home, and I'm asking for your feedback. Let me know what I did right or wrong and how you think I can improve, keeping in mind that things I'll be focusing on are not tripping over my words, pepping up my speech so that I don't put you all to sleep, and adequately and accurately reflecting the game state while also giving some on-the-spot analysis. You can find a YouTube link to the professionally cast game in the video description below. You'll also find a link to my Patreon page where subscribers get access to my matchup guides for all my tournament decks and weekly bonus content, including draft reviews and deck techs. Want to tighten and optimize your gameplay in real life? Use the affiliate link in the video description below to buy your very own Codex journal, and be sure to use code LUPINE10, that's LUPINE10, at checkout to receive 10% off your order. Finally, Daily Fab Gameplay is brought to you in part by Hemel from The Bazaar. It's never been more affordable to play in flesh and blood. Players have been buying the cards they need from Hemel for years. I started buying from him in 2023 and have never found a better deal. The Bazaar's prices are the lowest for singles, full sets, and class sets, including new releases. High Seas singles and more are available now and ship both domestically and internationally. Message Hemel on Blue Sky, Discord, email, or Twitter to see what he can do for you. Now, let's get right into it. We have a very exciting game here at the start of the 3-0 bracket featuring Katsu and Slippy. We're referring to both of the players as their hero names in order to avoid annoying mispronunciations, annoying and embarrassing. We have Slippy here going first. Without having seen the die roll, I suspect that Slippy did lose. In the aggro mirror, both players do want to go second, as it allows them to block without prejudice. So we have Katsu will be able to put a 3-block in front of Mark of the Black Widow. Slippy can potentially flick a Hunter's Clave in order to mark Katsu, as well as play something like a Razor's Edge or some other buff to get Black Widow over the top of blocks. We do see a flick-flack in Katsu's hand, so that would not necessarily be effective, but we also see the benefit of Katsu going second here, that even if Katsu does lose a card to Mark of the Black Widow, he will just draw back up at the end of Slippy's turn. No attack reaction, just a follow-up Persuasive Prognosis for 1. Unlikely to hit, Katsu could just put 3 cards in front of this in order to prevent the on-hit, but on Slippy's side, what we have here is already 2 very powerful stealth attacks going to the graveyard in Black Widow and Prognosis, which will potentially enable future Take Up the Mantle turns to turn something less threatening into something more threatening. Katsu here blocking for 5 on top of the 1 that is going to prevent any sort of single Razor's Edge scenarios. Katsu also putting 3 powerful combo cards into the graveyard, being 100 Winds, Bonds of Ancestry, and Dishonor, enabling future lines. The glare from the screen says that I cannot tell which mask Katsu is presenting, notably because this is Nationals Week 4. This is happening before the release of the Ira Armory deck. We see Breaking Scales. We see 2 Harmonized Kadajis rather than an Edge of Autumn. This is all to say that this would not be Mask of Irises. This would be either Mask of Momentum or Mask of the Pouncing Lynx. I'll get back to you on that probably whenever it is inevitably broken. Katsu here pitching a blue in order to send yellow Descendant Gustwave for 2 with Go Again. We do have Bonds of Ancestry in the graveyard if Katsu does hit here with another Gustwave in the hand, and we do see Underwhelming Gustwave in the hand. Then Katsu could potentially send a double bonds turn. The issue is we are so early in this game that just sending a bunch of damage at Slippy is unlikely to get blocks from Slippy. The fact that Slippy's deck is full of 3 blocks, however, does mean that they could just put a 3 block in front of the Descendant Gustwave here. Breaking Scales will not get it over the top, but an Ancestral Empowerment could. Instead, we see Katsu discarding the Gustwave after having hit, taking Slippy down to 36, and finding a combo card. We'll see what Katsu is going to find. Is he going for a double bonds line this early in the game? The answer appears to be yes. So we will have Bonds of Ancestry coming for 4 Go Again, following the Descendant Gustwave. Without knowing what the last card in Katsu's hand is, I cannot tell you if this is a Gustwave that results in a double bond line. It very well could be. We'll see what the follow-up is here. With Katsu having floating resources and an action point, it is unlikely to me that he would be finding bonds if not to just present more damage. It easily could have been a Fluster Fist with a Kadachi in between the Descendant and the Fluster Fist if Katsu did just want to present a 2-card 8 and arsenal a card. So you do have Bonds of Ancestry here, finding Underwhelming Gustwave. Imagining that if I was a more professional commentator, I would know at least the names of the cards in both players' decks, but assuming I'm practicing. We will have a 4-power follow-up to Bonds here that could potentially result in just some more damage. It could also result in Slippy using some blocks. Slippy currently on a 5-card hand. The problem with Slippy on a 5-card hand is that those cards don't necessarily translate into damage. Slippy's effect only benefits the first stealth attack every turn, so if Slippy is sitting on 5 head jabs, for example, 5 3-power stealth attacks, they would not be able to convert that hand and would be better off just blocking. However, if Slippy is holding on to attack reactions, a blue to pitch for Clave, or maybe a Codex of Frailty, then they would be better off keeping 5 cards. We see a Sink Below deployed on this Gustwave, covering 4 block on 4 power. Katsu, without an action point, is just going to move to the end of the turn, arsenaling that last card in hand. So we have Slippy taking 6 damage over the course of the turn. Katsu is down to 1 bond in deck, which overall seems like a decent place for Slippy to be. Playing Orb Weaver Spinneret, because Slippy has 2 Claves, they do not get the benefit of the Graphene Calicera, but they do get the benefit of +3 power on this Art of Desire body. Coming in for 6 Go Again, if it hits, then it will banish the top card of Katsu's deck. If that card banished is a red, Slippy will gain a life and draw a card. Katsu does play predominantly reds, however, Katsu, unlike other ninjas like Syndra and Phi, is playing a good mix of blues and yellows, as Katsu does want to be able to pitch, to use Harmonized Kadachis or play Surging Strike, so it isn't a guarantee that Slippy would hit a red off the top. We see a Shred being deployed to bring Flick Flack's power block down from 4 to 1, so Katsu currently blocking 3 on 6. Without a defense reaction in hand, Katsu is going to be taking 3 damage. From this Art of Desire body, Slippy will get an action point back from Go Again, and we're going to see what the banish off the top is. It does appear to be a yellow 100 wins. Certainly not a red one, so no draw, no life gain from Slippy. Slippy using 3 of the 4 cards in hand. We will see what that last card is. It wasn't an attack, so clearly it is a Codex of Frailty, though. So very good draw from Slippy here. Without something like a Command and Conquer or a Leave No Witnesses, Slippy has no way to disrupt Katsu's arsenal after Katsu is forced to put a card into the arsenal from Codex's effect. Slippy grabbing Mark of the Black Widow indicates that if this Black Widow is not covered by a 3-block, Slippy is very likely to flick a Clave in order to mark Katsu to push the effect of Black Widow through, and as we are looking at Katsu's hand, we do see 2 blocks in the form of Spinning Wheel Kick, a 3-block in the form of Whelming Gust Wave, and a 4th card that I can't tell. So Katsu potentially able to cover this with a 3-block. However, that Whelming Gust Wave might be necessary to pay for the 2 Spinning Wheel Kicks. If Katsu is sitting on 3 reds and a Whelming Gust Wave that could pitch, then the power of Katsu's turn is significantly reduced. For example, if he has to pitch that Spinning Wheel Kick to play a Spinning Wheel Kick. Katsu has no blocking equipment left, having used Breeze Rider Boots and Breaking Scales to cover that Art of Desire body. Whichever mask this is, Momentum or Pouncing Links, there's a guarantee that Katsu does not want to be using it for blocks on turn 2. Katsu discarding Spinning Wheel Kick. That's a Lord of Winds. So using the Whelming Gust Wave to cover the Mark of the Black Widow is going to be enough to get a card away from Katsu. That's a big win from Slippy. Also getting the card from Ponder for the Arsenal, and of course the Frailty that is reducing the power of both Harmonized Kodachis to 0. That Lord of Winds really not doing anything for Katsu here. At best, it is discard for the Katsu effect, probably finding something like a red 100 Winds or Fluster Fist to push 4 points of damage. But if this 100 Winds gets blocked, then Katsu is either looking at playing the 100 Lord of Winds for 2 and just getting it into graveyard, or pitching it for Spinning Wheel Kick, and then having 2 resources that he really can't do anything with. Slippy does decide to take the damage, saying no blocks. We'll see if Katsu is going to discard that Lord of Winds to the Katsu effect, or if he's going to keep it. But I am thinking that discarding here makes sense. I just don't know what he's doing with it. If he keeps the Lord of Winds, just pitching a blue for 4 seems very bad. Katsu would have no arsenal. Katsu would have 2 unused resources that can't even be spent productively on the Kodachis. So tapping the Katsu to indicate the use of the effect. Spinning Wheel Kick notably cost 1, cannot be discarded to the Katsu ability. So we will see if this is a discard, and it does appear to be no. Instead, just pitching the Lord of Winds in order to send Spinning Wheel Kick for 4. It is pushing 4 damage, but a 3-card 6 is really not where Katsu wants to be in this spot. Of course, Frailty is a big part of that. Without the Frailty, this would have been a 3-card 8, which is still not incredibly impressive, but is at least better than what we're seeing here. And this is a Kodachi for 0. If Slippy wasn't blocking 2 on the 100 Winds, I suspect that Slippy is not blocking 0 on a Kodachi. And we'll see how Katsu is going to finish up the rest of this turn, deciding to either play out the Spinning Wheel Kick just to push damage and to not have an arsenal. Always a relevant decision against Assassin. We've seen 1 Codex of Frailty played, which would punish Katsu for not having an arsenal, but 0 Leave No Witnesses and 0 Command and Conquers, which would both punish Katsu for having an arsenal. Statistically, Katsu is better off not arsenaling this Spinning Wheel Kick in order to dodge Arsenal Disruption, but chooses to arsenal the Spinning Wheel Kick instead, setting up a potential 5-card hand on the next turn. We'll see how that is going to go for Katsu. Slippy leading the turn with a 5-card hand with blue Double Trouble attacking for 1 with Go Again. Double Trouble says that if 2 reactions are played during the chain link, it gets +2 power, and on hit will banish the top 2 cards of the opposing hero's deck. This is not irrelevant against Katsu, as hitting that 3rd Bond of Ancestry off the top or other important combo cards would be very good here, potentially very good for Slippy. But I suspect that what we're going to see instead, if Slippy is keeping 5 cards, is a Flick Knives into Take Up the Mantle line. There we see a Justinek followed by a Razor's Edge. So potentially not taking up the mantle here, just pushing a bunch of damage. Right now, we've got 5 plus 3 on 1 plus the 2 of Double Trouble. This is coming in for 11 with Go Again. 2 reactions have been played. On hit, Katsu will banish the top 2 cards of his deck. Slippy sitting on 2 cards with an action point. We know that card in Arsenal is very likely not an attack action as, well, never mind. We don't know what that is. That was pondered from the Codex of Frailty. At which point, Slippy had no action points, so we don't know what this is. I suspect that it is not an attack reaction, as Slippy would have been able to flick a Hunter's Clave and then play the attack reaction to get the Mark of the Black Widow over the top of Katsu's blocks, hit the marked Katsu, and take another card out of Katsu's hand. Instead, we've got an Art of Desire body coming for 3. No Go Again on this attack. So this could very well just be attempting to use all the cards in hand. If this hits, Slippy gains a life, draws a card. Can't play the card without an action point, but hey, dealt 3 damage, got a point of life. We have a Flick Knives. After Katsu says no blocks, this will hit Katsu, deal 1 point of damage, more importantly, mark Katsu. We'll see if this is a Take Up the Mantle in Arsenal, or maybe it is just more damage. So we've got the Take Up the Mantle here, taking up into Mark of the Black Widow, now attacking for 6 on a marked Katsu. If Katsu has 2 defense reactions, then he is safe from this effect. However, if Katsu is taking 6 here, he loses the mark and will need to banish a card to the Mark of the Black Widow. So, very disciplined play from Slippy here. Yes, they could have gotten the mark over the top of Katsu's block on the last turn. Never mind, no they couldn't have because this was pondered. Very bad at this game. So, very good play from Slippy here. The hand really lining up and being able to take full advantage of the fact that Katsu really could not present a lot of damage on that last turn. Things going very well for Slippy this game. A lot of tempo so far, up 11 points. Notably, Banish is much stronger against Katsu than Discard is, as Katsu can interact with the graveyard with that last copy of Bonds of Ancestry, but Katsu cannot interact with his Banish zone. We've got a Spinning Wheel Kick coming for 4 with Go Again. This was the Spinning Wheel Kick arsenal last turn. Katsu drawing into another Lord of Winds that is going to pay not only for the Spinning Wheel Kick, but potentially 4 Kodachis or a Searching Strike, whatever the follow-up to this is. Slippy is sitting on Mask of Perdition, which has 1 point of block, and I believe that is Black Tech Whisperers, instead just having the Shelter from the Storm that's going to cover the Spinning Wheel Kick for 4. Katsu does have Breaking Scales. If he really needed to get this over the top of blocks in order to trigger the Katsu effect, discard a 0 cost, find whatever the follow-up to Spinning Wheel Kick needs to be in order for Katsu's turn to function. But notably, Breaking Scales is a one and done. It is only a one-time use effect. Slippy is at a healthy 30 life, so it may just be in Katsu's benefit to sit on the Breaking Scales and wait for a more advantageous combo attack, something like a Whelming Gust Wave, or maybe a Dishonor. 2 Kodachis is the follow-up here, using all of the floating resources. At this point, I suspect that Mask is Mask of Momentum, which is why Slippy would want to use Mask of Perdition in order to disrupt the momentum chain, blocking that chain link to Harmonized Kodachi and resetting Mask of Momentum. We have a Retrace the Past coming out. No active combo on this. It is just 2 damage. No Go Again. No effect. Katsu choosing to take a measly 2 points of damage. Slippy taking 2 points of damage. Katsu is going to arsenal that last card in hand, but importantly for Katsu, putting a copy of Retrace the Past into graveyard. If Katsu is able to find that 3rd Bonds of Ancestry, which we see it in his hand, this could be a very, very good turn. Slippy with a good turn of his own, a simple 2-card Command and Conquer. 6 points of damage, which does represent about a third of Katsu's remaining life total, and hitting that card in Arsenal, which we see the Bonds of Ancestry in Katsu's hand, so this Arsenal card may not be so important to a big damage line that Katsu is looking to put together. But even so, Katsu really doesn't want to lose that Arsenal card to 6 damage, and certainly doesn't want to take 6 damage, only being at 19. Start of the turn, Katsu is going to use Heart and Cross Trap in order to discount Surging Strike to 0 cost, coming in for 5 with Go Again. If this hits, then Katsu will be able to discard a 0 cost card to the Katsu effect, find a Gust Wave that is going to enable the Bonds of Ancestry. I see a Spinning Wheel Kick in Katsu's hand. I believe that is a snag as well. So if the Surging Strike hits, then Katsu does have a 0 cost to discard to the tutor effect, but if this Surging Strike doesn't hit, then Katsu does not have a natural Gust Wave follow-up to the Surging Strike and would have a fairly underwhelming rest of the turn, probably just pitching the snag for Kadachi Spinning Wheel Kick, which does, of course, still threaten Mask of Momentum, but is not nearly the big Bonds potentially retrace turn that Katsu is looking for here. Slippy does block out the Surging Strike. We know that Katsu does not have the Ancestral Empowerment to get it over the top of blocks, instead coming in with Kadachi for 1, following up very likely with Kadachi for 1. If this is Black Tech Whisperers on Slippy's side of the board, it wouldn't surprise me if they choose to use that to block the Kadachi, as they did last turn to interrupt the Mask of Momentum chain, instead blocking with Codex of Bloodrot from hand. This does interrupt the Mask of Momentum, but it does mean that Slippy is going to have a fairly underwhelming turn. There are lines available to Slippy that could make this a decent enough turn, something like Leave No Witnesses, activating Black Tech Whisperers, hitting Katsu's Arsenal, playing something like Codex of Frailty in order to leave no witnesses again. But typically Slippy does want to be on more than 2 cards in order to get the most value out of their turn cycles. Hovering over the Hunter's Clave, if this is a blue in hand, it is. We've got a Clave coming in for 1 with Go Again on hit mark. If this is a Codex of Frailty in Slippy's Arsenal, then Slippy does get to play Codex of Frailty, get a Command and Conquer back from the graveyard, use the Spring Tunic to get a second resource, and play the Command and Conquer. It is a very, very strong 2-card line available to the Assassins, but it even then does not come without cost. Yes, Slippy does have the Codex of Frailty, is able to get the Command and Conquer, will give a Frailty to Katsu, negating the power of those Harmonized Kadachis, get a Ponder of their own in order to set up a 5-card hand for next turn, but it does hurt that Slippy needs to pitch that Bonds of Agony. This is the first Bonds of Agony we've seen this game. If Slippy had their way, this would be a different blue, and the Bonds of Agony would be in the graveyard to enable future Take Up the Mantle turns. Instead, yes, it is dealing 6 damage, but it is a blue that Slippy does not have in their graveyard. However, Slippy is in no way going to complain about taking their opponent down to 6, getting that last copy of Bonds of Ancestry out of the graveyard, and setting up a 5-card hand against a 4-card Katsu that is under the effect of Frailty, that is going to make these Harmonized Kadachis much, much worse. We've got a Be Like Water coming in for 3 with Go Again. Notably, we can see the Ancestral Empowerment in Katsu's hand, so if Slippy does decide to put 3 in front of this Be Like Water, Katsu will be able to get it over the top of blocks. Here we have the Ancestral Empowerment, drawing a Break Tide, very interesting tech there from Katsu, putting the Be Like Water up to 4 power. That is going to be enough to not only trigger the Be Like Water effect, allowing Katsu to pitch to name the Be Like Water something like Surging Strike in order to derive value out of that Whelming Gust Wave in hand, but is also going to enable the Katsu discard if that is what he chooses to do. We do have the Whelming Gust Wave in hand that is a 0 cost. that Katsu would be able to discard in order to tutor out something, but we don't have a discard from Katsu. Instead, we have pitching Break Tide in order to pay the cost of Be Like Water to name it Surging Strike, then coming in with Whelming Gust Wave. Because this followed a Surging Strike, the combo effective active, coming in for 4, with Go Again, on hit, draw a card. Here is where we see the power of Breaking Scales, as that would be able to push Whelming Gust Wave up to 5 if we were to get something like a 3-block and a 1-block piece of armor, Spring Tunic, Black Tech Whisperers, in order to cover out the Gust Wave effect. So Slippy is either going to need to take some damage, take 4 here, allow Katsu to draw a card, or is just going to put 2 cards in front of it and have a very underwhelming turn. The Whelming Gust Wave does connect, Katsu does draw a card, and then pitches it to play Command and Conquer. Strong turn from Katsu, but now Slippy can either take 6, go down to 11, lose the arsenal and keep a 3-card hand, or put 2 2-blocks in front of the Command and Conquer, stay at 17, and have a 2-card hand, which is not very strong. As I said, Slippy does want at least 3 cards to really make their turn cycles pop, but with Katsu at 6, 3-power stealth attack plus Razor's Edge is lethal. Katsu does need to respect every stealth head jab that Slippy has available. I do see a pick up the point in Slippy's hand that is a 2-block, so as far as which cards Slippy is able to block the Command and Conquer with, pick up the point would need armor to supplement the 2-block, bring it up to 3. We'll see how Slippy chooses to deal with this Command and Conquer. If they want to take 6, go down to 11, lose the arsenal, and play with that 3-card hand, 1 card we know is going to allow Slippy to retrieve a Hunter's Clave if they choose to. That does enable more Flick Knives abilities, which is a surefire way to close out a game. So far, we have not seen Shelter from the Storm from Katsu, which would be the easiest way for Katsu to interact with the Flick Knives effect. Instead, Slippy saying no blocks, taking 6 from the Command and Conquer, losing the arsenal, arsenaling their own card. I guess that is what Katsu drew from the Whelming Gust Wave. I must have missed that card in hand. Slippy coming down with a Kiss of Death for 3 Go Again. Very powerful card to have played here. This turns on the power of cards like Tarantula Toxin, which would reduce the block value of this Tenacity to 0 and give Kiss of Death plus 3 power. But even without a Tarantula Toxin to buff the power of that Kiss of Death, it does mean that Slippy will be able to activate Flick Knives on a future chain link and throw the Kiss of Death instead of the Hunter's Clave, dealing 1 point of damage from the Flick Knives and an extra point of damage from the Kiss of Death effect. So Katsu here effectively at 4 without a way to prevent damage. And if this pick up the point hits, we also see Slippy pitching Justinic to the retrieve cost, picking up that second Clave from Graveyard. Then Katsu is going to 1 here. So if Katsu doesn't have a defense reaction for this pick up the point, Katsu goes down to 1. All Slippy needs to do to close out this game now is live and keep 1 card. Slippy can keep a blue to allow them to attack with the Clave and then flick the other Clave to deal 1 point of damage. If Katsu doesn't have Shelter from the Storm, Katsu dies. Or Slippy needs to keep a stealth attack that would allow them to Flick Knives any attack, really. Leave No Witnesses would work as well. Codex of Frailty would be a way to pick up an attack from Graveyard and then attack with that and flick. It will all come down to whether Katsu can close out a game with 4 cards in hand, or if Katsu is able to draw damage prevention in the next hand. Pitching Break Tide for a harmonized Kadachi, attacking with Descendant Gust Wave for 3, go again after Slippy has covered the 1 point of damage on Kadachi with Fiendal Spring Tunic, just saying I don't want to take any damage, and I suspect this game will be over before the before the Tunic is up to 3 again. We have Ancestral Empowerment bringing the Descendant Gust Wave up to 4 power. Katsu will now need to use Breaking Scales in order to get that Gust Wave up to 5 power in order to get over the top of Fate Foreseen and also discard what is presumably a 0 cost from hand. Now, notably, this Ancestral Empowerment was a 0 cost card that Katsu would have been able to discard to the Katsu effect, but if what Katsu has drawn from the Ancestral does not cost 0, then he would not be able to discard to the Katsu effect. Instead, Slippy making that a non-issue by playing a Sink Below to cover the extra power from Ancestral Empowerment. Katsu just playing Gust Wave, Underwhelming Gust Wave here, which Slippy covers with another defense reaction. My goodness, just being able to cover out 12 points of damage with 3 cards. Very impressive. Keeping that last card in hand, which I suspect is a attack that Slippy is then going to be able to attack with, threatening Katsu's life total, and flick the Hunter's Clave in order to present lethal damage. I did see that looked like a Snapdragon Scaler, so in any case, if the Flick Knife doesn't kill Katsu, then the Snapdragon Scalers can be used as the second reaction in the turn, in the chain link to bring Double Trouble up to 5. Katsu would have needed to not only give 2 cards in order to block the Double Trouble, but also would have needed Shelter from the Storm in order to cover the 1 point from Flick Knives. So, very hard game for Katsu to win from that position. And that is the end of this game. Slippy will be advancing to the 3-0 bracket, sending Katsu down to the 2-1 bracket in this, the Greek Nationals 2025 Day 1. I hope you enjoyed this commentary. Let me know in the comments any feedback, criticism, things you think I did well, things you think I didn't do well. Self-reflection, obviously, knowing what all of the cards do would be very helpful. At least knowing the names of the cards, if nothing else. I know it is not Whelming Gust Wave. It does have Gust Wave in the name, but something that I would like to think would not be so much of an issue in an official casted event as I would have a co-caster with me who would hopefully know the names of the cards, or at least someone working in the booth who could bring up Fabery or the Fab card database real quick just to tell me the name of the card. I'll be back with more gameplay, with more commentary. Until the next time I see you, take care.